오늘 행사는 우주항공청과 KTV 유튜브 채널로 생중계되고 있습니다. 강연과 대담 순서로 진행될 예정이고요. 이후 청중 여러분들과의 질의응답 시간을 가지고자 합니다. 그럼 이제부터 본격적인 행사를 시작하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure to welcome all of you here in this room, as well as those joining us live on CASA and KTV's YouTube channels. My name is Jae-won Jo, Deputy Director of the International Affairs Division at CASA, Korea Aerospace Administration. And I'm deeply honored to be your host for today's great event. As humanity steps onto the next frontier of space exploration, the transition from short visits to living on the moon feels closer than ever, especially following NASA's successful Artemis II flight around the moon this past April. To share how this bold vision is coming to life, we are privileged to be joined by someone who has been at the very forefront of this journey for many years. That is Mr. Carlos Garcia-Galan, NASA's Moon Base Program Manager. Quite fittingly known globally as the Moon Base Guy, Carlos leads the overall management and strategic development of building NASA's moon base. He is certainly one of the busiest people in NASA. I know he travels a lot, and today he made a stop here in Korea and will be sharing his insights in a lecture titled Moon Base, Humanity's First Outpost on the Lunar Surface. What a title. So without further delay, I'd like to please join me in welcoming Mr. Carlos Garcia-Galan with a big round of applause.
Hi, everybody. Go to the next chart. Do you guys have a clicker? Or? Oh, there it is. I got it. Thank you. Okay, so like the introduction said, I'm Carlos Garcia-Galan. My career, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I think I even have a picture for you. My career started at the very beginning of the development of the International Space Station. I came from Spain. Growing up in Spain, my dad was a pilot, my mom was a flight attendant, so I was always very interested in big machines that do interesting things like airplanes, ships, anything like that that was big and required a big team to develop, and it was a complex operation. I was really interested in that stuff. But it was one time that I was in a museum and there was a video of like the last couple of minutes of the countdown of a space shuttle launch, where I kind of in 2 or 3 minutes of that video kind of got to see all the different teams that had to make something extremely difficult happen. The mission control team, the engineers, the people on the ground. It was like, they were part of something much bigger than themselves. And they were working on something that the whole world would stop to watch and actually make it happen. And then it transitioned from the realization of all of those people working together to make something amazing to the energy of turning on the engines and sending, the mission that they were featuring had 7 astronauts to space, to the edge of the boundary of humanity where we can go, where they would do incredible things. So since that moment, I said, that's what I want to do. And at the time, NASA was kind of like the beacon of the leading role of space exploration. And that's one of the things that is very important in this endeavor is where through technology and science and exploration, we're establishing the leadership of, how it's kind of the thought of how things are accomplished, what we do with those things that we generate, what we do with the data that we gather, what we do with the technology that we have to develop to do these big things, how we share for the benefit of humanity. So this endeavor is about pushing technology, pushing science, and leadership and working together for the benefit of all. Doing it with international partnerships is very important for several reasons. Number one, because other countries and industries and academia bring new capabilities that, or new ideas on how to achieve the capabilities that we want. And we have found those to be very beneficial to our endeavors. The second one is because when you're doing something as complex as sending people to space, let alone building an outpost in deep space, which we have never done, you learn how to work together in solving super complex problems that becomes a skill that goes much beyond the space exploration. It really transformed the way we can address geopolitical problems in the future. And I'm not just talking military and conflicts. I'm talking about challenges that happen, like how you deal with, climate change or anything like that. Learning how to work together in those complex problems really gives you the know-how on how you can work together on many more complex things. But back to the beginning of my career at NASA, I was a flight controller in the development of the International Space Station, which was one of the most challenging things we have ever done. Building a football-size machine with multiple labs, multiple modules that the first time they ever met each other was in space. So imagine building two huge modules with complex robotics and trying to connect them, and you have one shot on Earth in normal conditions, super difficult. Well, imagine doing that in space where the thermal gradients are huge. You only have a few people being able to work on that, and you have complexities like you have to do it in a spacesuit. The fact that we developed that and it worked and it has been operating there for the last 27 years with humans permanently on board for 26 has been an amazing thing. But throughout my career working on the International Space Station, I always look back and thought, man, if I had only been born in this time frame when the Apollo guys were born, it was like a snapshot in a generation where people that came from, in the United States, from different places in life came together and got the chance to work on something as incredible as sending humans to the moon. So even though I was kind of living a dream, working, as a 20-something, 30-something-year-old with very strong responsibilities on building the International Space Station, I always thought back, and it's like, wow, I wish I would have been born in that period of time where I would have gotten the chance to do something as important as sending humans to the moon. Fast forward, and look where we are today, doing just that. I think things have come together in a way that something very special can happen. Just like more than 50 years ago, things came together, geopolitical, technological, people, humans, that allowed us to do something as incredible as the Apollo program. We're in that time right now. We have the political support, not just from one country, but from multiple. We have technology has gotten to a place where, even though it's going to be incredibly challenging and we're going to have to develop new ways of using that technology, the technology is there to do the things that we need to do to establish a permanent outpost in deep space. We have a moment in time in which our capabilities in science demand that we continue pushing to get a new look at, the solar system by perhaps finding things that have been there for millions of years that we have never seen yet, and being able to understand the moon and the Earth and the moon in a different way. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then it's not just the political support and all of the technology. It's really the industry, and there's multiple companies out there that gives us the production capacity. Not just from one source, but multiple. And there's companies today that can send humans into space there's a lot more than that. So the industrial capability, not only in the United States, but across the world, is also there at the right time to be able to do this thing. So what is left is that we can put this together. And of course, NASA is doing what it's designed to do, which is leading the world in achieving the near impossible. The US government is doing what it needs to do, which is providing a framework to lead the world in something as important as continuing space exploration. And then there's us right here. Not just the people from NASA, but the people from the Korean Space Agency, industry from different countries, including Korea, that are ready to take that step moving forward. So that's why it's so important in our extremely, I can tell you, extremely busy schedule, that we came here to talk to you about that, and we continue to form alliances with countries that we know have the capability, political, industrial, funding, budgetary, academia, to be able to do big things with us. So with that, I'm going to start the process of talking about how we're going to get this moon base done.
4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched. And lift off. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon.
All right, very exciting. So, so this video started with some images from our last mission, which was Artemis 2. It was the first time in more than 50 years that we had sent humans into deep space. And I'll tell you, I have, after the International Space Station, worked on the development of the Orion spacecraft for a long time with Najud right here, and in different jobs. One of, through our course in that job, Najud and I actually worked on defining and building the systems that were part of Orion and the mission. Najud was very integral on designing the exact mission that sent the humans around the world. So I was very familiar with what was going to happen. I was in the mission management team for the Artemis 2 mission, and I had no idea the impact that that mission was going to have. And that leads me to, why are we doing things like building the moon base? Number one, we are going to, but in the process of doing something that is near impossible, you're going to have to push capabilities across the board. Some of those are going to change the way we live here on Earth today. During Apollo, we all know all the things that were created new, and people talk about materials and things like that. I really focus on things like microelectronics, because today, if I can fast forward and talk to my kids about it, the thing that has transformed the way they live, think, operate, learn, is really things like their cell phones, watches, the power of having computational capability, communications, which is allowed by something like that. During the Apollo program, they had the technology of computing. It just happened to be, for simple computations in a room perhaps of this size. They had to take that and put it in a box so they could put it in the spacecraft so they can send humans to the moon. So it made them, forced them to push technology in a way that nothing else would have, not even the use. And in the process of that, innovation comes into play, and you start thinking how you can apply that to other things. So the technology push is what keeps us in the leading role in the world of using new technology for many different applications, which today we cannot even imagine how they're going to change the world, but we know certainly they will. The second one is groundbreaking science that we're going to be able to do in the moon. One of the reasons why we want to go to the South Pole is it's a very hard place to be, and especially if you want to achieve permanent presence. There's a couple of things. That the illumination point is very important, because we could go to an easier place to land and live, but then you get, 14 days of shade, 14 days of sun. And if you're going to do long duration missions, you don't want to spend 14 days in complete darkness, even if you have the power to be able to survive that. So on the South Pole, you have more consistent illumination, but it's very hard because the sun only rises a few degrees. But anyway, science, because of that, it leads to having things like permanently shadow craters, which may include volatiles, may have volatiles like water and other things that have been there for billions of years. So unlocking some of those things, we can also reach some of the really old craters where we can find some of the geological features that will help us understand the development of the moon and the Earth-Moon system. So basically, technology push, science that will allow us to understand where we live in, super important. But the third thing is what ties us back to Artemis 2. In the process of doing something that difficult, we're going to inspire millions of boys and girls to want to participate in this endeavor. Just like it inspired me, a kid from Spain that had no ties to NASA or anything like that, and I'm here today because of that reason. Maybe most of us, any of you that are in science, STEM, or even journalism, but want to cover things like NASA and technology and space exploration, it will inspire the world when we do something like this. Artemis 2, back to our roles in developing that mission, I knew exactly what that mission was going to be. I did not see that mission as this groundbreaking thing that would stop the world in its tracks. As a matter of fact, the pass around the moon, we had done Artemis 1, where we put the spacecraft in orbit of the moon, and we spent 7.5 days or so doing experiments with the spacecraft around the moon, with plenty of footage, and we went very close to the moon twice. I thought that mission was a lot more exciting than what we were about to do, which was designed to safely test the remaining parts of the spacecraft related to the crew systems. So they were going to have 4 hours of a flyby. In 4 hours, we changed the way the world sees the moon today, including mine. I look at the moon today, and I'm thinking about the words from Reed, Jeremy, Christina, or Victor describing micrometeorite impacts, describing the colors when they got to the full eclipse of the sun, when they went around on the far side, describing the different craters that they were. That's what I think about when I see the moon. And it wasn't just me. It was the rest of the world kind of stopped on its tracks and listened and paid attention to the mission in a way that we don't have the power to do in any other way. So that was 4 hours of a flyby. Project that to landing on the moon with humans, sending them on expeditions in lunar terrain vehicles, getting them close to the rims of craters that may have those volatiles that are millions of years old, getting them to operate drones from the moon base. All of that stuff is going to change the world in the perspective of what they pay attention to. So the moon base is the home for Artemis astronauts. Once we did Ignition Day in March, it was kind of a transformation for how NASA does business. A lot of the work that we're doing today was happening at NASA, but not in a focused way that we're doing it today. We took many projects and many different organizations across NASA and said, you now have 5 distinct objectives that we're working to, and everybody at NASA is working on these things. Going back to the moon, which is what Artemis is going to do, all the systems related to putting humans on the surface of the moon is Artemis, including Orion, the SLS rocket, the human landing system, the ground systems that go with all of that. All of that is Artemis. building a moon base, which is the first time we've done a permanent outpost in deep space. That's going to be the moon base program, which is what we lead. So the moon base is home for the Artemis astronauts. And then developing nuclear capabilities that eventually, hopefully, turn into nuclear propulsion that allows us to go to Mars, maintaining capability to stay in LEO, and of course, doing groundbreaking science. So if you think about a moon base, we're thinking, a lot of people think of a destination, like an airport terminal-looking building or something like that. Think beyond that. It's going to be a place where we have habitation clusters, because that's where the crew will be living for extended periods of time. But then there's many assets. There's the infrastructure around them. If you're standing outside of the habitat, like the picture yourself in that spacesuit. What are you looking at? You're looking around, you're seeing, of course, your habitat. You're seeing the infrastructure that allows you to stay there for long durations of time, including solar towers to generate power, and a nuclear reactor, some point within the horizon of what you're looking at. We also have assets that will allow us to move things around, including lunar terrain vehicles that are working autonomously or transport the astronauts one place to another, pressurized rover that allows the astronauts to go a little bit farther from the habitation cluster to places where perhaps there's scientific objectives. There's then rovers and surface mobility assets that are working 24/7 to develop the capabilities that we need. For example, we know without the atmosphere, anything that lands on the moon, anything around that area is going to get blasted with regolith. So you can't really put your landing site next to your habitat. So it's going to have to be maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. Well, how are you going to take those astronauts reliably? You don't want to have a super risky expedition just to go from your landing site to the habitation cluster. So do we need to prepare the terrain? Do we need to build roads? All of that stuff we're going to have to test. So we're going to have robotic assets that will be doing all of those things. Also, we know we're going to eventually need a nuclear reactor to get enough power for the types of missions we want to do. At a nuclear reactor, unless it's very far away, for which then we'll have to lay cables all the way through, we're going to need to basically shield from radiation. So all of those assets, lunar drones that will be able to land in one place and then hop to another for different purposes. All of those assets are pieces of the infrastructure that you'll be able to look at if you were in that spacesuit. But we're not going to do that all at once. We're going to do that in phases. Phase 1 is going to be from now. It's already started to through 2028. And in that phase, we're going to focus on learning as much as we can. And I'll go into details in the future chart. So we're going to basically use that to learn how to get there, what works, what doesn't, and what really is happening on the moon. Phase 2, which goes from 2029 to 2032, is where we will be building the permanent infrastructure to support long-duration missions. Think about power, communications, navigation, surface mobility, the roads, if we need any roads, and then, preparing the sites for putting things like habitat. If we want to do a habitation cluster, we're going to have to dock these things together. It's hard enough to do it in space. Imagine doing it in an uneven surface where you have to take something that's already there, bring another module, and try to connect them together. So we may have to prepare that terrain. All of that stuff we'll do in phase 2. And then in phase 3, starting in 2032, we will be focusing on finishing that infrastructure, including the habitation modules that will keep the crews alive and well in their long-duration missions on the surface of the moon. So that's how we're going to build it, and we're in the middle of phase 1 right now. In the process of building the moon base, we're going to focus on several things. From a technology perspective, remember, the moon base, there's 3 main reasons, the way I think about it, to do it: the technology, the science, and the inspiration factor. But we also want to, one of the main objectives, big objectives, is to be a proving ground to learn everything we need to learn from technology to logistics to the operational know-how before we send humans to Mars. Right now, we've been operating in low Earth orbit for 26 years straight without interruption, even through very challenging times like when we lost the space shuttle and things like that. So we have mastered that, but low Earth orbit is just a few hours from home. So taking stuff to the International Space Station and bringing the astronauts back if there was an issue, it's a few hours away. The moon, it's 4 or 5 days away. And you're going into a place where illumination, thermal environment, regolith is a challenge. So it is going to be a huge step function from what we know how to do in low Earth orbit, even what we learned to do in Apollo, because we're going to the South Pole and we're not going there just to stay. We're going there to, we're not going there just to get there. We're going there to stay. So in order to take that leap, be able to achieve that objective, and use the objective of using that as a proving ground before we go to Mars, which is like 6 to 9 months away. That's just one way. Then you have to stay there until the planets align, come back. We may be talking about 2-year round-trip mission. So imagine the scale-up of things you need to go from several hours, 4 or 5 days, to 6 to 9 months, maybe 2 years before you can get back. All of that stuff you can't just do at once. That's why the moon is so important step function before we get there. So what are the technologies we're going to be looking at? One of the most important challenges to go to Mars, I feel like today we have the technology to put a mission to send humans there. It's about staying there and coming back. Imagine having to take all the fuel and every single thing you need to live on Mars for that period of time, several months before you can come back home. Taking all of that in one mission or even several missions, staging it in the right place. So being able to use the materials that you find at your destination, it's huge in our ability to be able to go to Mars in missions that make sense, including bringing the people back. For example, being able to generate your own fuel and water, and perhaps growing food. All of those things we're going to be looking at on the moon. So in situ resource utilization, we know that we have found water. How easy it is to get to it or process it, a different story. All of that, and even in situ manufacturing, like can we build buildings there with the materials that we find, like maybe 3D printing, construction and whatnot. All of those things we're going to be looking at. Dust mitigation, super important, because it will be a challenge that it gets on everything. Even the astronaut suits before, when they go into the airlock and back into their habitation modules, anything you do in robotics is going to have to deal with that. Autonomous systems and robotics, to do the preparations, again, we're thinking long-term duration or permanent presence. We're going to need autonomy and we're going to need robotics for things to work for us 24/7, 360 days. Excavation and construction definitely is something we're going to need to do for establishing the moon base, and something we certainly want to master before we try to go to Mars. Survive the night capabilities. In the South Pole, even though we have more consistent illumination, it's very challenging because, again, the sun is only going to rise 2 or 3 degrees from the horizon. So you may see temperatures from plus 200 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 250 when you're in one of those shadows. And in the areas that we have permanent shadows or consistent shadows, it could be down to minus 400 degrees. Systems we have today don't survive that stuff. So early on in phase 1, when we're trying to gain a reliable access to the surface, some things may not survive. So moon base may look like hundreds of square miles with things that are already dead, because we took them there, they fulfilled the objective, and they died. Some of the things we know we have today may only survive a few hours, a few days. When they get into a lunar night period, they're gone. So developing technology to allow those things to stay there for a long duration mission, it's an absolute must. Phase 1, so we can learn more about those assets, and they need to be like that for phase 2 because they'll be part of permanent infrastructure. And then, of course, nuclear surface power is something that we know gonna have to achieve if we want to get up to the 100 kilowatt type of generation systems, which is what we think we're going to need. From a science perspective, understanding the character, origin, and location of the volatiles on the moon. Those things that perhaps, because they have not seen light, and of course there's no atmosphere to erode anything, they may have been there for billions of years. Millions, billions of years. So we're already developing systems that, like the Viper rover, that is one of the phase 1 assets that we want to deploy to the moon, that will look for those volatiles. Where are they and where's the composition? Imagine, I mean, today, how do we know about what the temperature or the climate on Earth was, 1,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago? In some cases where we drill for ice, and we kind of get a history book of what was happening in the different years, depending on how deep you can dig. Imagine if we can get that for billions of years ago. I mean, it will give us a picture of what was happening in the solar system that will help us understand where we live in. Interpreting the impact history of Earth-Moon system, advancing the knowledge of planetary processes, revealing the record of the ancient sand and space environment. That is what we can find if we go into some of these permanently shadowed areas and we find materials that we've never seen before. And of course, observing the universe from a unique vantage point. If we can put, let's say, a telescope on the far side of the moon, and we can have that access every time it's shadowed there, it will be a huge advantage on stuff that we cannot do on Earth. So back to phase 1. We were looking at what the moon base may look like if you were an astronaut in that phase. In phase 1, we expect at least one Artemis mission to come to the place. It might not be anything that looks like a moon base, but is the beginnings of establishing, the objectives of building the moon base. So what would you see? Key objectives of phase 1. And this is what everything we're doing in phase 1 is directed to these objectives. Number 1, gain reliable access to the ground. How do you do that? Multiple missions with multiple providers. We cannot expect to have our industry build the complexity of a lander if they think they're only going to get one shot at it. And we may not learn. One mission, even if it's successful, may not indicate that you have the reliability you need to get to the surface of the moon. I mean, that's step 1. Be able to get to the surface of the moon reliably. That means that we would like to have multiple vendors, have multiple missions successfully, so we can say, okay, we know how to get things to the surface of the moon. And for that, we're gonna, again, we signal during ignition day that we'll go from like 4 missions every 4 years to more like 20 missions every 4 years, or even more than that. So that's objective number 1. Objective number 2 is to get ground truth of what is happening on the surface. And that means we have a lot of models and data with definition up to like 1 meter of the surface. We need centimeters or even subsurface. We really need to put assets in the South Pole to really know what the temperature is like, what the illumination is going to be like, how the dust environment and regolith affects the systems we put there, how our surface mobility systems can move around. How hard is it going to be to go from landing site to habitation cluster? Really, not modeled or extrapolating what we know. How is it in reality? And then the third objective is to test things that we need eventually for permanent infrastructure. So, for example, we know we're going to need these solar towers before we have a nuclear reactor to generate enough power for the systems. Well, what's the challenge with those? So how high do they need to go to generate the power that we're expecting? Test those things out. We have switched our philosophy from doing big things that are very costly, have many requirements, take a long time, to doing much simpler things, like eliminate all the requirements to the absolute minimum so we can do more of those things and quicker. And you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like you don't say, oh, I'm going to develop this super capable rover that is going to take me 5-6 years to develop. It's going to take all the money I have for any rover. And then you put that on the surface of the moon and you find out it doesn't work, or it doesn't work the way you need it to work. Now what? We are wanting to change that philosophy in half to be much more simple and faster, and not try to achieve in phase one things that we don't need to. You know, failing and not accomplishing all the objectives is okay if you have, that's just one mission of 20. It's a catastrophe if that's one mission of 1 or one mission of 2. So all of that is things that we're going to be achieving in phase one. And for that, the types of assets we're going to deploy, the first piece of infrastructure is going to come in phase one, which is the constellation of comm satellites. And we're hoping to also build up observation and navigation pointing and time. So observation satellites and navigation and orbital comm relays will come in phase one. Of course, we'll have the human landing system, which is already in work through Artemis. And then we'll have different landers through the CLIPS program. We're also going to deploy, part of trying things that you think you're going to need in the future, we're going to try lunar drones. We'll start with a set of 4, maybe 3 in one mission and 1 in a mission after, that we can incorporate lessons learned. And they're going to be very simple. They're going to be basically a capability to deploy an asset that goes to one place, and they can move 2 or 3 more times across, tens of kilometers. And, we're thinking about what sensors to put in it. Certainly cameras, because we want to bring the world along with us in everything we do, but also perhaps put in, mass spectrometer or anything that we maybe can use the asset in its final location as a communication tower, retroreflectors so they can provide a location fix. So all of those things, and again, super simple, the simplest we can make it to achieve the goals, because we're really using them to learn if that is an asset that we should invest more in the future. And if they work and they provide good value, we'll be making a lot more of them with lessons learned and a lot more capability in the future. Uncrewed lunar terrain vehicles. We also want to explore the radioisotope heating units to be able to allow systems to survive the lunar nights with respect to temperatures. So that's something that is not new technology. It exists. We just need to develop the industrial production capability to have that readily available and test it on the moon. How well does it work? So all of that is kind of phase one proving ground and capabilities that we're going to be looking for. Phase two, if you're an astronaut, there's more assets that have shown up when you are on the surface of the moon looking around. You came in your Artemis human landing system, and what you find is there's several landers that are already there. Some of them are working, some of them are not anymore. You've already been preparing the terrain, and you're starting to basically place your infrastructure, especially on power. Not just the power generation aspect of it, but the power grid that eventually you will connect to your habitats and all the assets. We want to start heavy on power so we can make those nodes where different other assets can come in and recharge or hibernate so they can survive the night themselves. We'll have the pressurized rover that we're working together with JAXA on, which will allow the crews to move in farther distances, and maybe we'll be thinking about doing that nuclear reactor. All of that in phase two, and new things that show up beyond the stuff that you already had is, again, permanent infrastructure, surface common navigation, nuclear power, which we'll start with RHUs, but we'll want to definitely graduate to RTGs perhaps. Some assets like rovers that have RTGs can last there longer. They don't have to worry about surviving the night, and they can go into some of those areas of permanent shadows. And then we'll have the next generation of all the things that we tested in phase one, like lunar terrain vehicles, rovers that they can more effectively prepare the ground and stage the infrastructure. All of those things will be part of what phase two looks like. And then phase three. So take a moment to kind of visualize what it would be for you if you were an astronaut standing on the surface of the moon. You definitely have the habitation clusters now, because that's what enables us to do the long duration missions. Those are connected to the infrastructure, especially power. We may have extended habitation cluster to a couple of different zones in the vicinity of the moon base. In the horizon, you'll see the areas that we've prepared for landing zones. If we can prepare berms or walls, maybe we can bring in the landing zones closer to where the clusters are. You'll have a lot more assets because, again, we have first generation of assets, which may be dead and parked somewhere, second generation that now can survive the night and are there, and maybe third generation of more capable systems that we're using more actively to extend the exploration ability of all the crews. So that's kind of what you're looking at. And by the way, these are pictures of what we envision today, but our philosophy is that we're going to really be able to define what the truth is through phase one. We don't want to picture and lock ourselves into a vision of a moon base when we could unlock something that gives us the ability to make it a lot more capable. Like, for example, we know that currently we're leveraging and counting on things like Starship from SpaceX to land on the moon, and it may be able to take like 100 metric tons of cargo. Or Blue Moon, where we could fly with uncrewed assets a lot more often, for example. So if those things work out, maybe they work better than we expected, it may completely change the picture that you see here today. And we need to be ready to incorporate that change. So it's a lot of trial and error, learning, incorporating, and moving on. And when we're talking to the Korean Space Agency, hopefully we'll find those areas to collaborate with big elements, whether it's surface mobility or some aspects of power generation, whatever it is that we'll be able to work together on. You certainly have strong industry in all of those fields. So whatever it is that we're going to want you to think alongside of us on this aspect of try, learn, redeploy, and don't have a short-sighted vision of what it could be. You could develop capability that transforms the way we live here on Earth by trying to do it in a much harder environment, learning from that, and then unlocking capabilities that translate on our life back here to Earth. So phase 3, one of the things that we hope to be doing also in phase 3, this goes beyond the need to build a moon base, but what we do with moon base. Remember, it goes back to the objective of being a proving ground before we send crews to Mars. So we're hoping to, in addition to the habitation cluster, the grids and roads that connect you to the different parts of the infrastructure and the landing site, we also hope to have developed kind of an industrial side, and Jude alluded to this earlier in the press conference, where perhaps we're doing in situ manufacturing or in situ resource utilization. So kind of like the industrial area of the moon base, where we're trying things out, even if we didn't need it to build a moon base. Perhaps it's mining and using those components, or perhaps it's using the resources there to build structure and infrastructure, or perhaps it's something else. We certainly want to try those things. That'll be another area where, imagine if we can do that on the moon with nuclear or in situ resource manufacturing. Imagine how you can translate those same systems, which if they're on the moon, you already have to put them in spacecraft and send them there. Imagine being able to take that same technology and apply it to remote areas of the Earth where it's a lot harder to get that capability. So all of those things is what we're thinking about. So in the end, I think we are in a very unique place in time where we have the opportunity to transform humanity, transform the way we explore space, what we can do in space, and change the way we live back here at home. We don't want to do it alone because this is something we're doing for humanity, and we've spent a lot of time develop alliances and partnerships to not use that capability. So we want you to be part of this with us. And if we can do it, we'll make history. It's a new era of space exploration. Thank you very much, and I think we'll take questions after this.
Thank you, Carlos, for that wonderful speech. Maybe can we give him another round of applause, please? Yeah. We are actually known for giving many applauses. It's our culture, yeah. So next we're going to move right into our fireside chat, which I'm expecting to take about 45 minutes. Yes, so to take a closer look at what it really takes to sustain a long-term presence in the moon base, and in more detail, as well as how Korea and the U.S. can collaborate in this building strategic space partnership. So, leading the discussion will be today. It will be Professor In-Soo Jeon from Seoul National University, who brings years of experience from his time at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, better known as JPL. And joining him, he is a Director General Kyung-In Kang, who leads CASA's strategic vision in space exploration. So, In-Soo, Carlos, Kyung-In, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Wait, shouldn't we applaud for them too?
Not yet. We have an ample opportunity.
I'm looking to a lot of applauses. I was told that's what we do here.
Let's see, so how it starts. So everybody knows Carlos by now, that's for sure.
The moon base guy.
And I'd like to introduce Dr. Kyung-In Kang from CASA.
Good to see you. My name is Kyung-In Kang.
Yeah, and just in case you don't know me, I am In-Soo Jeon from Seoul National University. Probably I'm here because I just recently retired from NASA JPL, came to Korea last February. So I know a lot of things going on. I still remember life at NASA. So I think that's why I'm here, to kind of spur and initiate some dialogue. So thank you for a great talk. That's very inspiring, and I learned a lot. I enjoyed it very much. And so everyone knows the space exploration, depending on really good technologies, incredible technologies. But in the end, it's people who makes the decision, So let's begin by talking to Carlos about his own journey, how he got started, and then the experience that you experienced over the years at NASA for many different missions. So Carlos, you spent more than 27 years working on some NASA's biggest program, Space Shuttle and Space Station to Orion, and now the Moon Base Initiative. So looking back, you already mentioned that your inspiration you gained from Space Shuttle program and your journey to where you are here today. So looking back, if you kind of point out your experience, why you came to NASA at the beginning. I know you are inspired from NASA program, but not everyone comes to NASA just because of you are inspired. So what made you to come to NASA? And so can you describe your experience for that?
Sure. In my time, especially coming from Spain, NASA was the place to go. Fortunately, the way we're doing business today, the fact that we're not doing it alone, it doesn't, what I'm going to talk about, it doesn't just apply to NASA. It's about reaching for a dream and persisting in that thought and trying to find your way, which could be many different paths. So I personally was determined to be part of the team that was making that happen. Of course, I was thinking an astronaut because that's what everybody thinks about. But once I came to NASA and have worked with the teams, I've realized that the team is much bigger than that. Of course, they represent us in outer space, but they're just part of a team. Yeah. And I wanted to be part of that team.
Was there any particular things that you emphasized to come to NASA? I mean, your education, your something else. What did you do especially to come to NASA?
So I think for the people that work at NASA, and this again, I'm talking to NASA is my experience, but you can, these are things that apply generally. It starts with having people in the job that have a passion for it. Most of the people that work at NASA, and maybe the same for the Korean Space Agency, they could probably make more money doing other things, but this is their passion. Pushing the envelope of human knowledge, our capability to explore space, that goes back to the beginning of humanity. It's, 500 years ago is what was driving Christopher Columbus to cross the Atlantic. It is people that have that drive. That's number one. Number two is people that, and in my case, I had no idea how I was going to go from being a Spanish kid in Spanish high school to working at NASA in the United States. I had no idea. I just knew that I was not going to forget what my dream was, and I was not going to compromise that for other distractions, maybe going into other industries, make a lot of money. I knew that, and I knew that I was going to focus on the things that I could control. There's many things that you are out of your control. Don't focus on that. Just focus on the next step and the step after that. So for me, it was go to a university in the United States. I picked one that was close to Kennedy Space Center because I thought maybe I'll work with people or meet a professor that is involved with NASA. That was just one step. And there's many different steps you can take. So it's the combination of, don't forget about your dream, and there's many different paths. Don't lock in, just take one step, control what's under your control, and then let's see where that takes you.
Yeah, I totally agree because same thing applies to me too. I was at the same kind of position as a Korean American. So I was at the right place at the right time to go to JPL. So you just try to learn yourself, continue to learn yourself, and then wait for the opportunity. Then the opportunity will come to you. That's kind of
exactly it. Yeah, you nailed it.
So before joining NASA in 2010, I think you worked at Honeywell and served as the space station flight controller, both in Houston and Colorado. They're pretty kind of a unique experience working at private industry and NASA government agency. So you've seen both fast-moving culture of the private industry and NASA's safety-first approach. We all know. So from your point of view, so what are the biggest differences in how those two worlds make decisions?
Yeah, a great question. So my experience, I was a flight controller at NASA, and then there was this team from Honeywell that was trying to apply technologies the company had. Honeywell's a big company. They do a lot of industrial, refineries, home automation stuff. So I was leaving the flight control team at the time, so they invited me to join them and help them adapt their technology to spacecraft, human spaceflight. So I got a chance to see, I went around the country to Honeywell places, and again, I'm talking about Honeywell, my experience, it applies to many other things. And I learned how people were innovating for different purposes, and thought this directly applies to what we should be doing at NASA, because if we're doing the right thing at NASA, we're trying to achieve the near impossible. And for that, you need the best people and the best approaches to working technology. So that helped me kind of, going to people that were doing automation for a refinery, very huge scale, a huge amount of data, and how they went about innovating so they could get a product that will help the refinery. It's like we can apply that same concept for solving something that can help the space station.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest difference between private industry and the government agency is that private industry working for profit, and government agency, we are doing the unique things. Once one-of-a-kind things that they break the boundaries. So that's kind of big differences as I see it.
Yeah, and it's like what drives innovation is doesn't have to just be profit, but it's different purposes. Like if you want to have a very unique application to something, you start thinking about, okay, I have a car, but I want this car to do this unique thing. You innovate to transform the function of a car into whatever you need it. Industry is going to do that for profit, but we can take that same concept and try to drive that for example, building a moon base.
That's a very good point. Yeah. So your experience working across both private industry and the government agency kind of raises kind of very relevant question to CASA. So let's turn to Director Kang, hear about Korea's broader vision and the long-term roadmap. So Director Kang, so again, thank you for being here today. I know you're a very busy person. So I think the establishment of CASA still is the important milestone for Korea's space program. For Carlos and for those of us here today, could you give us a broad picture of Korea's vision for space exploration? What are the key priorities, and where do you hope Korea will be in the years ahead, 5 to 10 years from now?
The question is very short, but the answer is very long. Okay, I can very briefly introduce the key objective of our national space exploration policy and the roadmap. Our Korea is pursuing a long-term strategy guided by two core visions: expanding human knowledge, and another one is the fostering the space economy. Under these principles, we recently announced the Aerospace Industry Development Strategy of Korea, which placed the private sector at the center of Korea's aerospace ecosystem and future growth. A key objective of Korea's lunar exploration strategy is to help our domestic industry rapidly acquire deep space capabilities and become an active partner in the global lunar supply chain. To achieve this, we plan to aggressively support private sector-led R&D and create opportunities for companies to gain hands-on flight demonstration experience. Specifically, we aim to execute a series of milestone missions, beginning with the lunar communication satellite in 2029, followed by a small lunar lander demonstration in 2030, a cislunar exploration mission in 2031, and a public-private lunar landing mission in 2032. Through this phased approach, we plan to validate technology for lunar infrastructure and resource utilization, while positioning Korean companies as key suppliers in the emerging global lunar economy. Furthermore, we seek to work closely with global partners, including the United States, as it established a sustained lunar presence to expand Korea's contribution to key infrastructure areas such as communication, power, and surface mobility.
Wow, there's a lot to happen in the next few years. Every year we have something to do. We'll be very busy. So hearing from Dr. Kang, I think it's very apparent that the Korea has developed very broad, very challenging space program in the future. But the global space landscape is very quickly changing these days. In particular, I know the United States and NASA now is placing much greater emphasis on mission to the lunar surface rather than focusing on lunar orbit. So let's turn back to you, Carlos, here what this shift means for NASA's plan for the future of lunar exploration. So having served as deputy manager of the Gateway program, which went away, I guess. I was the PI of the Gateway program, one of the participating scientists, and it went away. It's kind of a pity. Anyway, so you are in the unique position to give us some insight onto this. So I heard NASA has recently shifted its focus toward accelerating the mission to lunar surface, development of moon base rather than continue to build a gateway-oriented architecture. So what you see as the biggest strategic and operational advantage of going to lunar surface first rather than staying in the lunar orbit?
We knew that the objective all along was to go to the lunar surface, but we have built an architecture that included an orbital station. The more we started working and maturing that architecture, it was going to the NRHO orbit was a performance penalty for the landers. Certainly, Gateway was going to accomplish some technology maturation and risk reduction gaps for things like missions to Mars that you can only do in an orbital thing, but it was not directly tied to what we need to build a permanent outpost on the surface. So while we would like to continue that, it was a shift of focus. It was about focusing all the resources, people, money, skills, to going straight into anything that's needed for the lunar surface, and we deprioritize orbital outposts that can support humans. We're still going to have orbital assets to support moon base, but not for humans.
So what kind of orbital asset you going to keep?
So we're definitely going to have communication constellations, which we want to start developing right away. We want to have maybe those or different assets that do navigation and PNT, position and navigation and time. And then we want to have a very strong observational capability.
I see.
Again, some of these things may be the same assets or some may not be. And then, other orbital assets that can give us more insight into the surface of the moon so we can benefit, the architecture development of the moon base. All of that we're evaluating, and it's welcome.
That's nice. So hearing what you just said, I think there are many things that Korea and United States can collaborate together for the lunar program, including communications and PNT, landing, etc. So it's very exciting, very exciting. So going to the lunar surface first, I'm just continuing the question about the lunar surface. So what's the most challenging technical aspect of your plan? What technical challenges you have to overcome to achieve your lunar first approach?
So there are many challenges. I put them in two categories right now. Achieving the cadence of missions that we want to do to achieve the objectives of phase one.
Well, the 20 to 30 launches every year, that's a lot.
That itself is a culture change.
Yeah.
It's a production capability increase that is going to require industry to start on their own. If people are waiting to get a contract from NASA to start working on something, that would not work. We've provided a demand signal, and that's why the number of missions that we broadcasted, it was to show that to our industry that there's going to be money and effort, and we're going to be soliciting these numbers of missions so they can start scaling up on their own.
Yeah, right.
So all of that is kind of in one category. Also, we're going to stress the supply chain. Supply chain is already stressed. Many of the parts that are used for military applications are also used for space applications. And the supply chain already stressed, and we're going to quadruple or more on the demand for space missions. So solving that whole picture, but also putting a very demanding objective is going to allow us to learn what really is the bottleneck so we can solve that. So solving that and having the production capacity to do is just as important as actually successfully landing on the moon. So that's one category of challenges. And then, of course, the whole second category is we're going to the South Pole. Thermal, illumination, radiation, dust, all of that stuff is going to challenge everything we know about spacecraft.
Yeah, so we only talk about the technical challenges, but I also see that your schedule challenges too, because in 3 years, 2 years, you have to do a lot, including For example, space reactor, surface reactors, the fission reactor has to be ready to be deployed in 3 years.
Yeah, and we're thinking about that a little bit different. I agree that if we take our recent experience as the measuring stick, you can say that the stuff we're declaring is crazy.
Yeah.
But that's our recent experience. That's how you get to accepting schedule slips. And I think we need to shift our mind and be more on the mentality. For example, what do you think the Apollo people thought when we had not even achieved orbit and they gave him a challenge to put a human on the moon within that decade? We have gotten too used to, thinking the way we do business today and the results that gives us and applying that to a new challenge. We need to think differently. If we do the same things, we're not going to get a different result. So we want to change the culture to really questioning from the top down, why not? What is going to slow us down? What is it? Production? Is it supply chain? Is it people? Is it budget? What is it that prevents us from doing that? And once we know, we can address that instead of just giving up on it because our recent experience base doesn't produce that.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's the NASA's way to achieve the impossibles.
Yes, that is exactly.
Right. Yeah, so just more personal side. I believe the moon-based initiative is one of the most challenging, complicated, ambitious programs, and a lot of technical, operational, and safety, schedule requirement, responsibilities. So, as one of the leaders, or as the leader of the program, how do you strike the right balance between moving the program forward and maintaining NASA's uncompromising safety-first culture?
Good question. It really is about focusing on the right things to maintain. In the process of the last 50 years, where we have built and done incredible things, near impossible things, we have kind of built our standards and maybe not all of those things apply to everything you build. So we're taking a very close look at what industry does for some applications, including robotic, what NASA does today for all things, including robotic, and what we do to make sure that we're not compromising safety and crewed missions. And we're looking at all of that and saying, what makes sense? What is the thing that drives that reliability and safety? Keeping that, but not taking a standards book and saying, here, you're going to have to do this no matter what. So being a lot more deliberate about what we leverage.
At the same time, you have to be agile to adopt a new culture too. Yeah. Right. So I'd like to talk about some collaboration part of the dialogue here. So building a moon base isn't something any one nation can do alone. So it'll take close collaboration with technologies from many different countries, many partners, working together seamlessly. So that brings us to an important question for Director Kang. The question is, how Korea and NASA, United States, build a deeper technology partnership to make the vision a reality? So Director Kang, Korea was one of the early signatories of the Artemis Accord. The next step is turning the partnership into real mission or technical collaboration. So from your perspective, what should be the first major milestone for the US-Korea space partnership that you're envisioning?
Not easy questions, but anyway, I fully agree with your view that the US-Korea space partnership should evolve from a declaratory framework into a true technological alliance. To further strengthen the US-Korea space partnership, Korea is committed to actively expanding our lunar exploration initiatives and increasing support for related programs. Through these efforts, we aim to foster a vibrant exploration ecosystem that creates expanded opportunities for industry to participate in to the journey to the moon. To support this vision, already I mentioned alongside the 2032 lunar lander mission, we are actively identifying additional initiatives. This week, we can communicate more detailed things with the NASA, and we will, I hope to decide to which part is the first stage.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
So I guess turning that vision into reality require more than just talking each other. We need a more strong collaboration at the working level. It require common technical standard and more maybe working level meetings, and environment or culture where companies can take risk, learn from failure, and keep innovating. I think so. This brings us to final set of questions for Carlos and maybe Dr. Kang. So Carlos, you led the inauguration of the ESAS, the ESM, European Service Module with NASA's Orion spacecraft, if I remember correctly. So you've seen firsthand how challenging international programs can be. Because I also experienced same kind of challenges when I was working for JPL for different kind of NASA missions, like kind of Mars missions, Jupiter mission, and so on. So question is, looking ahead to the moon base, I mean, where technology from many partner nations will need to work together. So how is NASA approaching the challenges of developing common technical standard and ensuring interoperability across all those different systems and different nations?
Great question. So we have a team. When we thought about how are we going to put all of these things together, it's not about building landers and rovers and lunar terrain vehicles. It's also about thinking how all of this comes together. So the first thing we did was there had been teams, and that's one of the things that Ignition Day brought, focusing a bunch of work that was already happening to one objective. So there were already teams thinking about technological gaps, strategy. So we created an architecture team. As a matter of fact, Nujud is the leader of that as the chief architect. And tell us what the vision of the moon base is and what needs to back that out to what needs to happen at what level. Another team like that is working on mission integration and interoperability. So they're not building anything, they're defining what all the things we build, how they're going to work with each other, how we stitch them up in particular mission. So the architecture team thinks about what needs to happen and when, from reducing technology risk and closing technology gaps to the end result. This other team is going to take all the things that get built and talk about how they interact together. And then, of course, we have teams focused on the development and build-up of those things.
Yeah. So also one of the kind of difficulties I experienced by when working with other countries, and ESA, for example, the requirement, even though we are talking about the same environment, the requirement is different. So requirement flow down will be very, very critical when working with different countries. So I think that's going to be one of the kind of key challenges, to have a same set of requirement flow down for the design. So that's my comment. Yeah.
The more we can operate as one team that has the different functions, the more efficient we're going to be. You have to start with removing, we all have different cultures. Yeah. We all have different ways about doing things, but the objective normally is the same. So it's really about removing the things that impede communication to where we're operating as one team with different functions and objectives. And that, what my experience is, what allows us to be a cohesive, effective team.
Yeah, thank you for your insight. So unlike government agencies, private companies and university labs may not survive a major setback, major failure from a mission. In space exploration, we know failure is often part of the learning process. how does NASA create environment or culture where each partners can learn from failures, setbacks, recover, have another opportunity to move forward?
Yeah, so that is a big part of the philosophical change that we're introducing even at NASA. It's not new. We've seen commercial companies successfully try this approach, where they build something. You first of all is the culture of being hardware rich, so you can try many times, and you incorporate failure into your learning process.
Yeah.
I mean, SpaceX is known, I think Blue Origin as well. Smaller companies are doing that approach. We've adopted that.
Okay.
And we have put out a demand signal, and we have reduced the requirements to a level of the absolute minimum necessary to achieve the objective that allows people to not rely on a one-shot opportunity. Some companies, we're also trying to emphasize the viability of the companies, such as, they don't just depend on this one landing. If it fails, they go bankrupt type of thing. We're looking at those things before we award significant missions to them.
Yeah,
so we can ensure that, we have enough supply.
Yeah, it'll be a very good lesson learned for Korea too. So after hearing from Carlos about NASA culture, so Director Kang, how you envision that how CASA will adopt those kind of accepting failures from private industry or university lab or research institute. So how CASA will deal with it?
Yes, yes, very, very good questions. And already Carlos mentioned, while traditional systems engineering has given space systems an extraordinary level of the reliability, the risk-averse methodology can sometimes pose a major hurdle to breakthrough innovations. To achieve truly ambitious exploration, we must find a way to balance rigorous reliability with bold technological risk-taking. CASA 2032, the lunar lander mission, we will maintain a disciplined space engineering approach to secure the core technologies required for lunar exploration. By applying proven systems engineering and mission assurance practice, we aim to demonstrate a highly reliable landing capability while advancing critical science objectives. At the same time, we are designing complementary lunar programs to embrace more ambitious and innovative approaches. This does not mean abandoning traditional system engineering. Rather, we seek to apply it with greater agility, allowing for mission-optimized components and actively leveraging proven technology from commercial industry.
Yeah, thank you. So let's stick to your word. So we will watch the CASA, how does it do in the future. Okay, so I think we are in the final stretch. Carlos, let me close with one final question, maybe three in one question. So we have many of Korea's leaders from academia, industry, and research institute here with us today. We have a luminaries in the space community from Korea. So as Korea looks to become a true partner in the moon-based initiative and ARIMS program and any other things, what advice would you give them? And as you look to the future, what kind of a contribution do you hope Korea will make? I mean, I know it's kind of a TBD for now, but what's your wishful thinking? And then what role do you see Korea playing in the journey to the moon base and permanent human presence on the moon lunar surface? So what's the Korea's role for the goal?
We see Korea as a country that has the capability to have a major contribution to moon base. That's why we're here. And it's not just small delegation. We have brought a significant part of the moon-based leadership in this trip because we value and see the potential of what Korea can do in support of building the moon base. In terms of a message to the leaders in academia or industry in Korea, I would encourage you to look at the big picture of what we're about to do. This is not just any regular program. This is truly embracing the going after the near impossible and is bringing humanity a capability that we just don't have today. We're going after it today because it's not impossible, maybe near impossible, but it's not. We have the technology. So it's about seizing the opportunity to put your know-how and your capabilities to an objective that will change the world and make history. So you want to be part of it or not? You want to be in the front seat of that development or not? So it's that question that you need to answer. And I can almost guarantee that when you participate in something that big, you can't really predict exactly the outcome, but it's certainly to be amazing.
Yeah, so yeah, let's make the history together. Add Astra to the moon.
To the moon.
So with this, I'd like to close our dialogue. So maybe Director Jo will MC the Q&A sessions. should we all stay here? Or?
All right, guys, great discussion. Since Carlos likes a round of applause, why don't we give them another one? Great
I like
discussion.
that you like the rounds of applause. I don't need it for me, but
Right.
I like the practice.
Okay, cool. Right, so thank you everyone again for a great discussion. Now we'd like to throw it open to the audience here in the room for the questions. So we have actually pretty much time, half an hour approximately, so we can have enough questions from the floor first. So if you have any, please raise your hand, identify yourself, your name, your affiliation, and we'll bring the mic to you. So it'd be better if you can bring your question in English, but of course, if that is not uncomfortable, if it's not comfortable, we have our interpreter here. Where is she? Okay, she's at the back of the stage. All right, so please raise your hand.
You want to come to the front, just in case? Okay. Give her a round of applause, please.
Now you're following me. Okay, also for...
I'm embracing the Korean culture.
All right, you learn fast.
You're being good at it.
Right, so for those tuning in online, you can also throw your question through the chat box. So who'd like to go first? Yes, I can see the gentleman over there. So can someone bring the mic over there, please? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Chang Jin Lee, and I'm very impressed by your nice presentation about the moon base. I'm not quite familiar with speaking in English, so I'd rather ask some kind of question in Korean.
You are doing great, by the way.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Thank you so much. 10여 년 전에 미국 국무성은 우리나라 누리호를 사용해서 발사하는 어떤 위성에도 미국의 부품을 수출하는 것을 핵심 부품을 수출하는 것을 허용하지 않는다고 얘기했고 그 스탠스를 계속 유지하는 거로 저희가 알고 있습니다. 아이타하고 EAR. 그런데 만약에 우리가 문 베이스 건설에 참여를 하고 거기에 들어가는 우리 발사체를 대한민국의 누리호를 쓴다고 한다면은 이런 그 국무성이나 어떤 미국이 가지고 있는 누리호에 대한 어떤 스탠스가 유지될 것인지 아니면 변화될 가능성이 있는지 그렇다면은 이게 만약에 그렇지 않다고 그러면 우리가 어떤 것을 해야지만 이런 그 미국의 입장을 변화시킬 수 있는지 말씀 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
So my question is, even about 10 years ago, we have seen some very strict restrictions on exportations or the trades between the parts of the satellites. And according to everything that we've heard so far, is there any chance that it's going to be less strict? Or if that's not the case, are there things that we can prepare for, given that there can be still some strict restrictions on exportations of the parts of the satellites?
Yes, he mentioned in terms of the ITAR and EAR,
Thank you.
the trade control.
Yeah, good question. And I don't know all the details of specific stuff that you may be talking about, but we are certainly looking at all aspects that is going to take for us to collaborate closely with international partners and try to facilitate effectiveness. So some things we're going to look at again and challenge. We're doing that across the board. Anywhere where we have things that are hard or impede the objectives that we have, we're evaluating what aspect of that is preventing it from happening. We may look at some of that too. Of course, the ITAR stuff is more than just one government agency. So it expands across several U.S. government agencies. So it's all about the details. But we're certainly in the business of reevaluating our processes today that are slowing us down or preventing us from achieving the objectives.
I'm actually seeing a lot of people nodding, which means I think they understand what Carlos just says, so we can probably skip the translation back. So next question, please. Yes. Any CASA member, please bring the mic over here. Please, the gentleman with the blue shirt here.
First of all, my name is Sungju Kang, and I'm a PhD in astrophysics, and I'm a science communicator working from South Korea right now. I'm running a YouTube channel, which is the Unreal Sciences, which is one of the famous YouTube channel. I want to say that, like that. So Dr. Garcia-Galan, it's very honored to meet you because I've been following your work online, live streaming, and it's really great to you speak in person right here. One of the things I really want to ask you about is I'm a science communicator from South Korea, and I've been live streaming Artemis and many other lunar missions with our audiences over the years. And one challenge I've always had is that it's easy to explain a single launch or landing, what the mission is, and what is all about things and those kind of the things, but it's much hard to explain the progress of the project like a moon base, which is running decades and decades, right? So from your perspective as the moon base leader, what do you think that will be the most important milestone or success metric that public should pay attention to in the years or each phases of the moon base project?
Good question. First of all, thank you for what you do, because it is extremely important that we bring the public along with us, and there's people talking and translating what we're doing to how it benefits them. So we're trying to encourage that communication. For example, in Moonbase, we're doing a monthly update, which we're working on our website, but then we're putting stuff every month, talks about different aspects. Sometimes it's a big award announcement with the administrator. The next one we're going to drop August 4th is going to be kind of a behind-the-scenes look at all the people that are doing the landers. Then we'll do something similar with surface mobility. We'll do fireside chats. So one of the challenge of continue communicating all the different stages of that and what should the public be looking for. In this approach of doing simpler missions but more often, we definitely want to get some early wins to maintain and prove to the government, the public, that we're on the right path. So then we can get more support and we can get continued support and all that stuff. So in the first set of missions, we're really focusing on these three objectives. we have leveraged the CLIPS commercial lunar cargo program that we had before. We've leveraged the construct of that program, but we're doing a lot more to try to enhance the reliability of that. So we're putting a lot of effort leveraging all the NASA engineering and science team into helping these vendors develop systems that will be successful, looking at the missions, looking at the landing sites, looking at the systems. So for the public, I think mission by mission, take a look at what we're doing. Is the mission successful or not? And what are the assets that we're deploying? Not in the measure of how long do they survive or not, but how are we taking those steps to achieve the 3 objectives that we set out in phase 1? So we're going to try to be very public about it. We're going to try to bring you with us in the mission. We're going to put cameras in all of those things. So my measure of success, number 1, early on, is to achieve the production capacity to have missions very often. By phase 3, by the end of phase 3, we want to have missions every other month, you know, and achieving that production cadence is going to be important. The high reliability access, so multiple vendors with multiple successful missions, and then doing meaningful technology development in every mission. Going away from paper studies about what things may work, testing things on Earth, and putting those things on a spacecraft that can take it to the moon, even if it's not the final thing that we want to use, even if it's a small rover that can test how to move dirt around. So looking at how are we moving the needle forward with technology capabilities. So those will be the things that I'm hoping people are going to pay attention to, and we'll try to communicate often along the way.
Thank you so
If
much.
I may chime in here, so we are doing space missions, very expensive missions using government money and the public money. So, as a NASA, I think the CASA too, we value the public outreach very seriously, because we are using the tax money, government money, the public money, and then we are in depth to the public to tell them how this will benefit for the future, for the benefit the public, student, and next generation. So science communication, science communicator like you are very important to doing the science missions, supporting science missions, that either for CASA or NASA, both. So thank you for your effort.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, what a great discussion. Yeah. Okay, anyone else from the floor, please? Yes, gentleman over there.
Thanks for your lecture. And my name is Eun Kim from Kari, and currently I'm working for the reader of the K-Pillar mission of South Korea in science part. And my question is that what is your relationship between your moon-based program versus the resources on the moon we are able to use? For example, because I made the same question 2 years ago when there was a meeting in Daejeon with Paul Clive-Neal from the University of Notre Dame. At the time, I asked him, at the time we don't know about that, what kind of resource can we have near the South Pole region, for example. At the time, his answer was that we can save the money, you know. So whether we have, right now, we don't know exactly how many resources can we have and reuse for the sustainable human beings in that area. So if you go back to the 20 years ago when there was a book written by Paul Stewardess about the value of the moon, you can see that in the book there was a statement that there might be huge amount of the water near the South Pole region. But by using the shadow camera instrument capable, we have measurement, and then the measurement showed that maybe not any sign of the surface iceberg, for example. So that is a current measurement status. That means they're going to have to go deeper in the surface to find out any variable resources. So that means that this program will be based on some idea that we can have those resources used for the human being. So you believe that those measurement has nothing to do with your program, or has been made close relationship so that having data to use for the human being rather than then is going to be one of the key points you have pursued your program at the end.
Yeah, so objective 2 of phase 1 is get ground truth. That not only applies to the stuff we're going to put on the moon, but the resources that we may find there. One of the things about the shift that we did after Ignition Day on focusing the entire NASA team on very specific objectives is that we are aligning our science team, our early technology development team, and our flight projects teams all together to achieve this very simple, concrete objectives of moon base. So we're looking across the board and we're matching the assets. For example, we want to do the lunar drones, we want to do rovers, and we want to do landers. We're trying to match those missions, and we're going to have frequent missions, so we have more opportunities to get data, with our scientists and the best instruments we can get to find out what we may find there. And we're also trying to leverage the science of it to kind of lead us into the objectives that we have. So all of that stuff, it's coming together, and phase 1 is going to be about deploying those assets and instruments, getting data, and getting our teams, whether it's science or technology or people doing flight projects, getting them to translate that into the things that will benefit Moonbase.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please.
My name is Tae Jung. I'm working at Korea Institute and Civil Engineering. I ask in Korean for better question. 그 아르테미스 미션에서 한국이 어떤 기여를 해야 되는데요. 우리 한국은 특별히 탐사에서 되게 제한적인 경험을 가지고 있습니다. 그러면 아르테미스에서 좋은 기여자가 되기 위해서 우리의 제한된 어떤 경험을 스텝 바이 스텝으로 확장해서 기여하는 전략이 더 좋은지, 아니면 아르테미스에서 원하는 어떤 필요에 의해서 과감하게 새로운 분야에 우리가 도전하는 전략이 더 좋은지, 미국에서 이제 기대하는 어떤 카운터파트로서 어떤 카운터 파트너를 더 기대하는지가 궁금합니다.
So my question is, in Artemis mission, in order, because Korea also wants to be a good contributor for sure, but our experiences in exploration is quite limited, we could say, compared to some other countries, but we still want to be a very good contributor as a country. So would you say if there are 2 ways that we can take, number 1 is we can try to be step by step, become a better contributor by trying to improve what we have and just taking the step by step approach. Number 2 is really go for the Artemis contributor and take a very bold step and maybe try to achieve something new in the new area. So as well, among these 2, which is closer to the US expectation as a good counterpart or the good partner in the Artemis plans?
I think both approaches are fine and can work. So we're looking to, having the investment, not just money, but technological investment on the different pieces that we're defining as needs for the moon base. What approach you have, I think we have already determined that you have a significant capability across industry, your space agency, academia, that you can achieve this. So we're going to work closely with the Korean Space Agency and let them guide us into what's the best use of that capability for us.
Thank you. Any more question, please? Whenever I do this kind of moderation, yes, please. The mic is coming along.
Yeah, my name is Jae-dong Choi from LIG Defense and Aerospace Company. My point of view is company's question. So if Korea companies wanted to join the phase 2 and phase 3 indirectly or indirectly, so how can we process to join the program? So I mean, what kind of process, what kind of service do you know we can join the program?
So there's going to be different opportunities. The first step will be we'll work with the Korean Space Agency and identify areas that Korea can contribute as a country. And then it'll be up to the Korean Space Agency to determine the engagement of industry in those big things. We're also going to open up opportunities because we're striving to do many missions every year, monthly, bi-monthly, whatever. So we're also going to have opportunities for smaller payloads to fit into that. And that can be, we're going to open up collaboration with universities and smaller companies. We'll do that through the Korean Space Agency and maybe broader than that. So that'll be another opportunity. And then there's a third avenue, which some of our industries already exercising, which there's going to be a large footprint of U.S. industry that is involved in the launch vehicles, landers, the infrastructure components like power systems or surface mobility rovers, and they themselves are looking for the best partners to engage in there. So there might be industry-to-industry collaboration that you may be able to leverage with them. So that's kind of a third avenue. Look at the industry players that are in play today with the current contracts, which we're expanding significantly. SpaceX, Blue Origin, Astrobotic, Intuitive Machines, Firefly, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, anybody that's in play with Artemis or not. So there's an avenue there that you may be able to explore. But I think the first avenue and what we're focused on today is to find the big contributions, and the Korean Space Agency will be your input. Anything you would like to add?
Yes, we can talk more detailed things with the CASA, and we can forward Carlos.
Yeah, through the CASA, so we will discuss about that. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of people joining today here in this room from the industry, so I think your answer helped a lot in paving the way forward. Right, just one or two more questions, then I'll move on to the questions from the online. I was about to say I have a very bad habit of just like picking someone randomly, ask them question. Yeah.
I have one more question. Sorry. As far as I know, you have been work on the ISS and the Orion Gateway, and now you're leading all the moon-based project. So, looking back across all those programs and everything, was there a particular moment when you felt humanity's approach to space exploration fundamentally changed? Because that's the beginning of the ISS, and that's the point the people who are human just to try to moving their habitability from the Earth to the space. So, and what do you think drove that change? That's my question.
So in my period with the space station, there was certainly a big change. There have been many years of development, and when we translated that to actually starting the assembly missions, that was a significant change, because we went, even the teams that were making up, the different teams that were working on this thing, it really gave you the laser focus on the key things that you needed to have successful missions. We had a lot of setbacks. We had issues with deploying I was in the electrical systems. We had issues deploying the solar arrays. We ripped solar arrays. We had computers where we lost all the computers. And we really laser focused on key skills and processes. Everything else was less relevant. We focused on the things that helped us fly and maintain the capability in space. That was in space station. For Orion, it was the lead up to every mission we did. We did Exploration Flight Test 1 and Artemis 1, And each time that we did that type of mission, it translated years of analysis, models, and all of that stuff into the reality of operating something in space. And it basically changed everybody's perspective on their job immediately. Like what Artemis 2 just did for everybody that was working on anything related to crew systems. It brings that focus into play, which is why in Moonbase we've started with, we need to fly. Flying very often is part of the ingredients of success. In itself is an objective. Just because, just achieving high cadence of missions is something that we need to embed in the culture. It's not okay to not, to give up on that early requirement. And we're gonna push to find what is that prevents us from doing that and attack that as a top priority.
Okay, thank you. If there is no further question, I see one hand right there. Yeah, that will be the last question we'll be receiving from this room. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Juno Shin from the private industry as well. And first of all, thank you, Carlos, and everyone for your inspiring presentation and ideas regarding the moon base. I would like to ask you a question as a staff working in the private manufacturing industry and pursuing new businesses like something to do with the moon. So you mentioned in your speech that with the new coming era of space, it would be too late for the industry to just sit and wait for NASA contracts to come, but we should rather preemptively develop and produce products that would actually be useful for the moon base. But one possible discrepancy here would be that while private companies need some kind of business plans to allocate resources into something out of its original business scope, but as of now, NASA would be the only potential customer to actually use our products or services in the future. Thankfully, NASA's prestige and its commitment would be enough to make the companies move. So what kinds of official or what kinds of commitment, either official or unofficial, can NASA provide to the private sector companies to make those efforts run more effectively?
So we have we thought about that a lot because we knew that we're going to need industry to be a major player into this effort of developing the moon base. When we think about the moon base program, we're just one part of the endeavor in charge of fomenting and bringing people together that it's going to take to do this. So we thought a lot about what kind of demand signal can we send. That's why we chose to do a demand signal that went through the 3 phases. We talked about $10 billion per phase of investment, and that's not new money that doesn't exist yet. That was, especially in phase 1, the US budget process, supposed to happen every year and so forth. But we looked at the money that we had, and by realigning the existing programs in multiple areas that we're now going to focus on this moon base, we declare how much money we're going to invest, which translated into missions. So we basically provided a commitment to industry of in phase 1 with phase 2 and 3 projections, but especially phase 1, the amount of things that we were going to be soliciting from them. And on ignition day, we put out several contracts on that day for them to bid. And every month, we have been trying to follow and meet our commitment there. Every time that we have completed the definition of something we need, we're either starting a project in-house to build it or we're soliciting it to industry. But our objective is nothing else than building the moon base. I think for private industry, this is where innovation comes about. It's not just that objective, is what can go beyond that into potential commercial markets that may be created. And that's where the innovation of an entrepreneurship comes into play. Like how many customers, because we have so many missions, may be requiring communications networks, and that motivates people to may want to put a communication constellation. Or what are the things we may find on the moon that we may want to utilize or mine potentially? How much will NASA need, or other customers, once we get into the moon base? A huge thing about permanent or long duration missions is going to be logistics, moving things from Earth to the moon and on the moon about in different places. How much of that need will be there? So again, we can see and project commercial markets. At NASA, we're not in the business of creating them. We want to develop the moon base, and in some areas where we can help, we will. But it's industry's ability to foresee, through innovation, additional opportunities that I think should motivate them to do things.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move on to touch some questions I received from the online. I think this is a very fundamental question. It literally says, what do you plan to do on the moon base? So with that in mind, I have another couple of questions here. So will the moon base consist of pre-made modules that are assembled on the moon surface, or will constructions actually take place directly on the surface of the moon? And another related question is, what will be the shape of the moon base? Will it be like something familiar, which we can see like house-like structure here in Earth? So those are the questions.
So all of those questions are super interesting and questions that we ask ourselves, but are questions that I don't want to provide an answer as matter of fact, this is going to be what it is, because a huge part of that is about learning what works and doesn't, learning the environment that we're going to find there, defining the objectives of what we're going to be doing there based on what we find that is going to be what. So we have an idea, of course, of what are we going to be doing when we get there. That's why we're creating assets to allow the crew to move around and be able to go from a central location to a place where there might be, high priority scientific objectives, for example, for them to do. We talked about technology and science things we want to do there. So all of that will definitely keep us very busy, the crews that go there. But specifically, I think we need to do one step at a time, and that will inform us, what those things are, including the infrastructure. We have some idea on how to do habitation today, inflatables, deploy an entire module, and we have some plans for those things, but a big part of that is trying how those things work on the moon through phase one, and then adjusting our plans accordingly. So like today, we already have agreement with the Italian Space Agency to deliver a hab, which is going to be able to move from the landing location. But all of that, we're hoping to adapt based on the early findings that we have. And much beyond that, we want to really try things before we get too far ahead.
Great answer. Thank you. So that's 4:30 here. We're about to close. So I think we can wrap up here. So thank you all for great questions today. And a big thank you to you again, Carlos, for your wonderful speech today. And it was especially meaningful to have NASA's vision for building a moon base shared here in Korea, making a truly exciting moment for our growing partnership in space exploration. So this is the end of the session. I'd like to conclude here. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here in this room and also from the live stream globally. Thank you very much. Thank you.